I'm Luke Kennedy with the McCain Institute, and you're in the arena with leaders and citizens who are taking character-based action. We're very lucky to have in the arena today Dr. Michael Crow, the president of Arizona State University, and widely acknowledged as one of the absolute top innovators and educators and more in the U.S. and around the world. We're thrilled to have you with us today, Dr. Crow.
Happy to be here.
And this isn't your first appearance on an In the Arena podcast. I know you did Governing Magazine's In the Arena podcast. We tend to think ours is much better. There you talked about educational reform, and we'll get into some of that as well, but we hope to kind of go a bit broader. When we talk about people being in the arena, you redefine whole arenas, which is a different way of being in the arena. Mm-hmm. Do I have that right?
Well, you have if you just accept the existing arena or the existing design, you won't accomplish very much because it turns out that most of our issues that we're trying to solve, most of the things we're trying to make progress on, require you to reshape the arena. So just fighting in a fixed arena is, as brave as that might be, is insufficient to actually produce change.
So we're speaking here in Washington, D.C., our street side studio. We're filming as well, so a few folks will be able to see it on YouTube. That's no accident, right? Why are we here in D.C.?
Well, we built this facility called the O'Connor Barrett D.C. Center for Washington, D.C. We built this facility to bring Arizona values, to bring Arizona thinking, to bring the kinds of ways that we think that new design should advance to Washington, to be immersive here. We're not interested in politics. We're interested in solutions. And so the way you bring solutions is you bring people together. So you need a place to convene, to get together, to work, to be on neutral territory. So that's why we put this facility together.
So I feel a little bit disingenuous asking that, and that I saw, I know I work here, and I saw a little of that magic last night. There was a pretty interesting dinner last night, the convergence that I saw. And the topic was China, but it was really more in the room and how it was discussed that struck me. Would you care to talk about that?
Well, what we were trying to do there through a program that we have called Future Tense, which is a relationship between ASU, New America, which is a think tank here, and Slate Magazine, is we try to make sure that we just don't follow on with the ongoing continuous babble about different kinds of issues. So this was an event where we were talking about what should the relationship between China and the United States be, just as we seem to be at a point in time where we're rethinking that relationship on both sides. We've got trade issues, we've got military issues, we've got things going on. And so there was a free and open forum, including one of the Chinese ministers from the embassy, very significant folks from the media, significant folks from the diplomatic corps of the United States, or former diplomatic corps of the United States. The point I was trying to make was one of, could we find a way to build a path where China and the United States learn to compete economically with very, very specified rules of competition that everybody has to live by, thus probably then producing two great superpowers who don't become military adversaries.
Right.
So that we don't repeat the very, very negative lessons of the 20th century, where superpowers got into these death throes against each other. And how do we avoid all that? So the nature of the conversation was about all that.
So can I hit you with two things at once here? Cheating came up last night in the context of you need fair rules to compete.
Yeah.
And that's vitally important. Although some folks, if they think they can't get fair rules, want to take pretty drastic action. So that came up to do with China, but it's also come up this week in parents, if I have it right, basically cheating to get their kids into institutions.
Well, we've got some pretty perverse incentives out there. So what's happening in the United States is that we decided to make the coin of the realm of academia basically selectivity and scarcity. And so there are schools out there that say, well, we've only got so many slots and we're only going to admit so many people. And oh, by the way, we're the grantors of social status. Well, you're going to create perverse incentives. You're going to create a situation where then getting into the school is more important than what you are when you graduate from the school. Getting into the school is a granting of social status. And so then you get people then that are willing to bribe coaches, to bribe school officials to get their kid into school. I mean, it's totally perverse. And so the thing that ASU that we've done is we've said, well, we can build a faculty that is as excellent as any faculty that exists anywhere and still be egalitarian in our admission standards. And that means then if you meet our admission standards, you are admitted. And so here are our admission standards. You have a B average or better from high school. You take 15 or 16 courses from high school, and you do well in those courses. And if you meet those admission standards, then you're in. And then in addition to that, I think that what's happened here is that we've just gotten to the point where people don't want to play by the rules.
Right.
And so there's this thing. I mean, it's an unbelievable distortion. I'm happy to see that a number of people that were participants in this have been relieved of their positions, as they should be, both those that bribed and those that took the bribes. And sure, we still have to go through the justice system to see what the actual facts are, but many of these people have already pled guilty or have said that they did this. And so we have to have very strict rules for how companies compete, how teams compete, how sports teams compete, how people get into college, how people get out of college, what's A, what's B, what's C. Sort of a core American value, rule of law needs to operate everywhere, including being admitted to college as a freshman.
So that, courage, character, integrity, that's the sort of things that we're absolutely about in our training at the McCain Institute. It goes much broader than that. So that even connects to things like China, doesn't it?
Yes. And so it does. And so in China's case, what we're looking for there is they have now evolved so rapidly that they've become this economic superpower, but an economic superpower who doesn't yet fully understand all of the rules for fair engagement economically. Well, we need to make sure that everybody gets to those rules of fair engagement and that they're enforced. Then let's have a free and open competition and may the best team win. Now, sometimes what you'll get out of that is fantastic cooperation, which would be great, fantastic competition that leads then to breakthroughs, which then leads to other new things happening. And so I'm a big believer in the old theory of creative destruction, that the way that you advance economically and the way that you advance new ideas is for new things to destroy old things that then become the new paradigm, and then you move forward. Well, to do that fairly, there have to be rules of engagement.
So innovation, disrupting knowledge enterprises, that's what I hear and see a lot of in association with Arizona State. I also, there's been a big feature article out on you recently that I hope you liked. I enjoyed reading it. But you think of yourself as an architect.
Yes. So I think of myself as an architect, but I'm not technically skilled enough, and I don't have enough three-dimensional capability to be an architect of buildings or systems or cities. I view myself as what I call a knowledge enterprise architect. So I construct and have been constructing for decades institutions whose purpose are to produce knowledge, either in the form of people, in the form of ideas, in the form of technologies, in the form of solutions, and then purvey those solutions, that knowledge, to society for some kind of positive gain. So I've enjoyed completely designing knowledge enterprises and then using those knowledge enterprises to help, in the case of the United States, to meet our democratic ideals, to advance the interests of the United States, to advance the concept of American exceptionalism, to advance all kinds of things. And so that's what I do.
You talk about some sort of societal advance. I've heard you talk pretty persuasively about advancing the entire species.
Well, we are working to advance the species. I mean, our species, it's funny, if you go to the internet, if you're listening, go to Google, open up Google, type in what's the most complicated object in the known universe. So the answer is the human brain. So I don't know why we were all blessed with an 80 billion neuron, 10,000 synapses per neuron brain, but it turns out that level of complexity allows genius to occur, creativity to occur, unbelievable insights, unbelievable technical skill, unbelievable creative expression, all from this human brain. And so what we're not yet fully realizing our potential as a species, because we're not fully empowering human beings to be as creative as they might be, to be as problem solution oriented as they might be. And so what we need to do, and I think there's huge potential here, is to figure out how we're going to take that world's most complicated thing, the human brain, and get all 7.5 billion of them operating at a much, much higher level.
That's definitely an in the arena and then some challenge. Changing gears a little bit, you were a javelin thrower in college.
Right.
Why javelin?
In high school, I was a four-sport athlete. We moved around a lot, went to different schools, and So I played soccer, I played football, I wrestled heavyweight wrestling, and then I threw the shot put and the discus, did the long jump and the triple jump and a bunch of other things. And I wasn't big enough to be a college shot putter, and I wasn't big enough to be a college discus thrower. I did okay in high school. So I had thrown I'd won this softball throwing contest where we were living in Illinois at the time, and the coach at Iowa State read that I had done this and said, well, maybe you could throw the javelin. Come on over and take a look. So I go over and I pick up the javelin. I threw it like 170 feet the first time I threw it.
Is that good? I should know. I don't.
It's good enough that he said, I want you to be one of my javelin
Sounds
throwers.
Good. Okay.
so, so that's how, and so I love sports, and I wanted to be a part of sports, and it looked like I had never seen a javelin before that in real life. And so I just said, well, maybe I can be a javelin thrower, and then I can keep doing sports in college. And so sports was a tremendous thing for me, tremendously important, and I got to be a javelin thrower. So.
And you still stay very connected to sports from what I can see. Academia is an industry, I think you can argue, and academia intersects with industry. And talk about the kind of innovation and disruption that you're trying to bring there.
You know, we're working with thousands of companies in terms of producing people products for them, graduates. And so we have 13,000 companies that we interact with on that front. We're working with hundreds of companies in terms of solving problems and working together. We're working in all kinds of areas, and what we're working with Starbucks, you know, in terms of human capital development. We've tried to break down the barriers that typically existed between universities and companies and say, well, if you're interested in human capital development, we want to work with you. If you're interested in solving problems and making the world a better place while being a company, we're interested in working with you. If you're interested in defending the United States, we're interested in working with you. And so we're very, very heavily vested in being as responsive and as engaged and as linked as we can to companies.
So I'm not really looking for you to plug the McCain Institute, though I suppose, you know, it'd be fine if you do. But John McCain Institute, can you talk about how that intersects with your life and work?
So John McCain is an individual, was an individual, and lives in spirit, who represented so many of the core values of our country. That when he came to the university and said, well, I'm thinking about getting something going. I've been looking at the Naval Academy. I've been looking at different schools. I'd like to get an institute put together that doesn't focus on me, the person, but focuses on an approach. And the approach was character-driven, values-driven decision-making. And I said, well, I'd love to be a part of that. I'd love to find a way to be a part of something like that, because that's my big belief of something that we're missing. Over and over and over again, we stumble because we don't have the right kinds of ways about thinking about problems. We become too narrow. We lose our path. We lose who we are as Americans. And so John McCain was a person that said, can we build something like that? And we said, we'd love to be a part of building something like that. And so what we're all about in the McCain Institute, and why we're the happy home of the McCain Institute, is because it is about trying to find ways to make the best decisions, trying to find ways to produce the best designs, trying to find ways in which this fledgling democracy, this republic that we call the United States, can continue to evolve and be successful, and work with others who want to find, you know, the values that this country represents for their people also. And so in all of that, the McCain Institute is unique. He didn't want a think tank. He didn't want white papers. You know, what he wanted was to produce a new generation of leaders from around the world, and to produce new kinds of decision prototypes that could help people to make better decisions.
I've heard John McCain referred to as the white tornado, certainly when he was in campaign mode, but often with his energy. You apparently have 90 meetings or so a week. So what's next in your presidency? What you're trying to do, and then kind of next for you personally?
So for me, in terms of the job, I mean, what we're really looking to do is to take this model and produce, in what we call the new American university model, an entire new evolutionary step in American higher education. And that is an entrepreneurially oriented, enterprise managed, rapidly adaptable, democratically engaged, egalitarian institution which can scale and can deal with all of the scale and the diversity and the energy of the future of the country. And so we're not there yet. We're a long way down that path, but we're not there yet. So we have a number of things that we have to still achieve. I don't think about much other than that, other than my children and my grandchildren and my wife and my family. I think about them, and I think about this, and that's what I focus on.
That means 90 minutes a week for the foreseeable future. That's what I mean. I know it's way more than just about
right.
about meetings and the like. It's kind of a standing question we have, advice for the future generation, and you can pick it up however you want, but the next generation of educators, what advice would you have for them, and what do you think it's going to look like for them? Or what would you like it to look like?
So for them, they have to find a way to modernize, to innovate, to realize that people born after 1996, let's say, with the emergence of the internet, I call them now Homo sapien.nets. They're different. Most of them carry little supercomputers around in their pocket. They may not be using them for the best things always, but they're carrying them around in their pocket. So if we can't figure out how to make formal learning through educators basically an enhancement of the broad-scale learning that a person can now carry out on their own, we're not going to be very successful. The second thing that I would say to them is we've got to figure out how to get past this notion that there are good students and bad students and good learners and bad learners. Everybody got the same brain. Now, there's a few out there that have issues, medical issues or whatever, but everybody got the same brain. Now, what are we going to do with that brain? How are we going to advance those individuals? And so we're a big believer that people often get classified into learning classifications. I guess the third thing that I would say to educators is stop trying to drive everyone into a single outcome. Realize that there's very, very diverse sets or types of human intelligence. There's not just analytical and verbal intelligence that most of our education system is built around, but there's also tactile intelligence, how you make something. There's emotional intelligence. There's spatial intelligence. There's ranges of intelligence that then there's no test for creativity. There's no ACT test or SAT test that says you're going to be a great music composer. And so we need to move to embrace the breadth of human potential and the breadth of human intelligence, and that's what I would say to up-and-coming educators.
I'll go one more, and this might sound like pandering. It really isn't. This building opened about a year ago, and ASU had the play-in for the basketball for March Madness, and the word came down in the afternoon, hey, if you want to stick around, the university president's going to watch the game, and there'll be pizza. And it kind of showed me how you connect with students and youth. It was surprising, quite honestly. I went, and it was good fun. They didn't win, but, now
yes.
the year
Syracuse.
on. Right.
The school
exactly.
I went to.
So students, I mean, what other than, students should go to Arizona State, I'll say that for you, but what would you say to students?
I have come to this realization that the university is hierarchically designed backwards. And so it's not that faculty are the apex of the institution. Students are the apex of the institution. Students are in a sense, the next best evolutionary presentation of our species. And if you've made it into Arizona State University, that means we've already determined that you're a college-ready person. And if you're not college-ready, we've got pathways for you to get in. But if you're college-ready, that means you're the best that the species has produced. And so one should come in as the best that the species has produced and then use the university as a way to prepare yourself to be what I call sometimes a master learner. Don't look at yourself as going to the university to be educated in A or B. Look at yourself as going to learn how to learn. I would be the happiest if every kid that graduated from ASU left and from that point forward was an unbelievable learner. They adjusted to this, they adjusted to that. Or they took their undergraduate degree in philosophy and bored in, just the deepest, most significant boring into philosophy. And from that, they produced new philosophies and new ideas and so forth. And so learning, from my perspective, is the key. The empowerment of the learning is the key. And the students have to realize that they are the best that exists and take that as an empowerment to move forward.
President Crow, thank you for being in the arena.
Happy to be here.
This podcast is produced by Patrick McCann and Justin Kessler. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, tell your friends, or leave a review.